YouTube. I do not do movie reviews often, but I just had to do one on this video. I just finished Killzone 2, and in 5 minutes or less, okay, 6 or 7 minutes, depending on how often I rant, I will share with you why this movie is probably one of the best martial arts movies I've seen in a long ass time. And I'm telling you, I've watched quite a few martial arts movies. So first and foremost, Killzone 2 is not a sequel to Killzone 1 by the one starring Donnie Yen. That one was really famous in the martial arts world after it was released because it was hugely popular, especially in the Asian crowds. But this one seems to be some type of homage film by a different director, and it isn't a sequel. It's just like, starring a lot of really successful, famous celebrities as well. And it's kind of weird like that, but it is incredible. So, first off, the cast is just crazy. There's Tony Jaa. He is you probably already know who he is. He is that Muay Thai legend who has put Muay Thai on the map with its films, specifically the Ong Bak films, which have just blown up on the internet because of how they just make Muay Thai so cool. We've never seen martial arts in Muay Thai form on film that well. Then we have this other guy, Jin Yoon. I think his name's Jin Yoon or something like that. Yu Jing. He is a Hong Kong martial arts legend. He has been for around 20 years. And I'm telling you, one of the reasons why this film is so great is because they showcase these two martial arts legends. Obviously, Tony is kind of the new legend because he's recently emerged on the scene. And they've combined them and created some of the most amazing fight scenes ever. Now, initially, the first fights where they go head to head, I think that was the only real shallow point of the film. Those fights, I felt they could have been more epic and powerful. There's this one scene where there's like a prison breakout and they end up fighting because they haven't realized they're on the same side yet. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but that fight was just too short. Like you barely saw them fight. It was barely a fight. I don't know what it was, maybe budget cuts or something, but it only lasted like maybe 30 seconds, a minute tops, and there's no big fanfare. That one wasn't so good. But the end fight between when they link up and they fight the big boss, that fight was so epic, and we've never seen Muay Thai to that level. And there's just so little preambles leading up to it that were just so amazing. There's this one part where the boss is like, I will release my hostage if you release yours. And then the lights cut out, and then Tony Jaa, who has a gun pointing at his back and handcuffs on, he just looks backwards, and you know what's gonna go down. They're not up for the hostage exchange. He wants to, escape from the guy with the gun behind his back and do some really sick Muay Thai fighting. Another huge, probably one of the biggest miracles of this film is that they combine the usage of two big languages. Technically three, because they also use English, but literally the two main stars of the film don't speak the same language. One speaks the main Thailand language, and then and then the other one, he speaks Cantonese and Mandarin. There's actually also a bit of Cantonese in the film. So technically, they combine 4 different languages. There's 4 languages that are fairly often referenced in the film, even English. Now, could people kind of imply what's going on without the English? Yeah, it was very minimally used, but still, there were parts where it was very clearly used. And the way they did it without it becoming such a clunky film was pretty much through the use of a phone. They used the phone as a translator. The phone had a translating app on it, and the whole idea was that like they would translate between each other, but they made it so fluid. And I think what really strung it together was not only the storytelling, but also the emotion and the heartache that went into it. There's a lot of pain. The whole premise of the movie is that Tony's daughter is about to die from this like leukemia, and he has to find a transplant replacement, and it's this whole like flurry of an adventure to do that. and the whole thing was so emotional and well acted that you actually, like, most film actors, they're not really good, dramatic actors. They can't really cry, but I was impressed. These people really pulled it out of them, and it kind of just strung the whole thing together. They made the translations very quick and brief and fluid, maybe 1 or 2 seconds each exchange tops, which really, made it seamless in a way. And it's really tough to do when there's so many different languages, even just 2 languages being spoken, and I haven't seen that done well in a while. I think another one of the big, amazing parts of the film, I just want to go back to it and re-emphasize it, was the fight. I mean, there's the big fight at the end was just incredible. I've never seen Muay Thai combined to such a level, and it was such an incredible fight because the big boss guy they fought against, he did an incredible performance. It was a 2v1 fight, and this guy did some things I've never seen before in martial arts films. I mean, there was Muay Thai kicks. He did like all these crazy stuff to dodge those kicks. It's hard to even explain. Oh man, I'm so caught up in talking, I forgot to breathe. The point is, incredible fight. I don't want to spoil anything, so it's kind of like weird, but like there's some parts of the fights that were just amazing. Was the story sometimes a bit clunky? Yes and no. I think there's some parts of the story where you're just like, okay. But 95% of the time, and I can definitely not say this for a lot of the other films I watch, including Ride Along 2 and all those other comedic films, there's a lot of points where I just got bored or the whole thing lagged constantly. But for some reason, this film, it always kept me on my toes because there's so many plot twists and new events that occurred, and it really, I mean, there's at least 15 surprises in the film, and I think that's what made it so different, and that's what really shocked me. There were many surprises. They weren't like huge, but nonetheless, it was incredible how they just kept you on your toes. A new thing after new thing and after new thing popped up. They weren't so many that you're like, but they weren't so big that they were like entire storyline changers. So they were just like medium size. I don't want to spoil anything, but it was worth watching for that alone. I think the main pull of the show is still the martial arts. Nonetheless, I mean, there's this one part at the end where Tony breaks free from his captor, and then he finds a chain and he starts swinging it around his wrist. And at that point, I knew what was going to go down. I was like, we're going to see some epic Muay Thai. And sure enough, I mean, he did some crazy stuff. And I think one of the best parts about this film is it pays homage to the fact that we've seen what Tony's capable of before with his previous films with Muay Thai. And they take a nod at that by showing some fight scenes where his opponent is savvy of this and pulls out some really innovative counterattacks to his Muay Thai kicks, his elbow, axe knocks to the head, his knees to the chin, all those crazy things, his double knees to the chest. Some very innovative, creative counterattacks are put into play with this fight. So I would say the main pull, if you want to watch this film, is definitely for the martial arts fighting. But a close second would be the actual storyline, because I've never seen this strung together so well. One of the interesting things and amazing things I've seen about this film is the scene pacing and clipping and editing. They various times during the film they had 3 different venue scenes playing at the same time. They would kind of switch between them within a 2-minute span, and it'd be very quick switching, but it all made sense because the pacing and the dramatic build up to the climax was the same for all of these different scenes. And it was one of those, the storyline made it so that they were all building towards each other. And again, without spoiling it, I can't get into specifics, but I was like, wow, this is actually really good. It kept me on my toes, so I didn't like get bored, but it also wasn't too fast or slow to the point where, you know, you got lost, and at the same time you didn't get bored. So it was like 3 different, you know, venues pacing. You know, one of them with no fighting at all, another one, you know, a lot of fighting, and another one moderate fighting, and, you know, a lot of talking and like dramatic, a lot of suffering going on, which pulls at your heartstrings, physical pain. And you see these different scenes, and then there's like really slow scenes where it's just like they're talking, but it's like really tense and dramatic because of the stakes. And then they go to like the climax where all these, you know, 3 different scenes are like pacing, and they speed up the switching in between each of them. And then when the climax is like all 3 are you're switching between these 3 very quickly. I don't think the film was perfect, but I think it was definitely up there. I've gone way over 5 or 7 minutes as promised, so I'll wrap it up here. I don't think the film was perfect. I do think there were some plot holes. The CGI was pretty lame, but what I've said so far made up for it. Definitely one of the best martial arts films I've seen in quite a while. If nothing else, watch it for the fight scenes. You know, even the fight scenes I think could have been better, but only slightly. Overall, great movie. Highly recommended. Thanks for watching.